right, welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are pitting Negative Man against Cyclops.
Right, and this is in lead up to the Dark Phoenix film that comes out later on this week, which we'll be reviewing in our next episode. I've been looking forward to this duel for a really long time, mainly because I'm just such a big Cyclops fan. There's not a lot of Cyclops fans out there, I feel like.
I'm a Cyclops fan.
Like, those of us who are Cyclops fans, we're all in. Scott Summers is the best.
Now, Negative Man, he's a little bit more obscure, so hopefully, if you haven't seen Doom Patrol, you're still looking forward to learning more about this character later on.
Yeah, maybe like do a Google search on Negative Man if you're really unfamiliar with the character, but he is pretty cool. He's a member of the Doom Patrol who also has trouble controlling his energy powers, just like Cyclops.
Yeah.
So we think it's a pretty good matchup. But yeah, we'll find out who would win in a fight between those two later on this episode.
Before that, we're going to break down the news items from the past week, which there wasn't a lot of news. It's a very slow
news month.
Yeah, the whole month. We're going to be talking about how one of DC's comic writers, Tom King, is co-writing the New Gods film with Ava DuVernay.
Right, and we'll also be going over the Jessica Jones Season 3 teaser trailer, more of like an announcement trailer.
Yeah, it's only like 30 seconds long. It's nothing really, but it's something to talk about. As always, our segment times are in our episode description, so feel free to jump around to whatever segment you want to listen to.
Yeah, we want to give a quick shout out to everyone who rated us on iTunes. We had a lot of ratings this week. We're up to 109 ratings on iTunes.
Oh my gosh.
Although it was announced recently by Apple that they're going to be phasing out the iTunes brand and just sticking with, Apple Podcasts, Apple TV, and Apple Music. So we should probably stop saying iTunes and just call it Apple Podcasts from now on. But as you guys know, we're looking to get to 200 ratings on Apple Podcasts because at that point, we will be eligible to become critics on the Rotten Tomatoes site and have our Marvel and DC movie reviews count toward those films' official tomato meters.
It's a huge dream of ours, something we've wanted for a really long time. We apologize for pestering you guys constantly week by...
I want to be able to add film critic to my resume.
That would be amazing. That'd be really cool.
Last week, I forgot to give a shout out to my buddy Chris LaRusso, who said that he gave us our 105th rating. He's a buddy of mine who started listening to the show recently, and hopefully he's still listening to the show and listening to this shout out. I better hear from him, otherwise he's dead to me.
Jeez.
But with all that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize.
A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that Jonathan personally draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was in regards to the Swamp Thing television show that's debuting on DC Universe. We were talking about some of the trailers, and they looked pretty scary, and the show looks pretty scary. So we wanted to know, out of all the Marvel and DC films, shows, and comics, which has been the scariest, which has scared you the most, and why?
I do have to say that I was supposed to give my thoughts this episode on the Swamp Thing pilot episode, but my wife was like really tired this weekend, and I didn't want to watch it without her. I should have just watched it.
Excuses are like assholes, and you are one of them.
I did finish Doom Patrol, though, and I'll probably talk about that towards the end of our news segment.
Okay.
But honorable mention for our question of the week goes to Jason Brownlee, who said that he was terrified by Blade's opening scene.
Yeah, that was kind of creepy with all the vampires and all the blood and everything like that, but it was also pretty cool.
It was badass.
So I was like simultaneously terrified as well as astounded. Honorable mention also goes to Andrew Jason Allen, who said that Constantine City of Demons was the scariest DC movie he's seen because it was so creepy and dark.
It was. It was disturbing.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can listen to our Constantine City of Demons review that we recorded last year.
Yeah, around Halloween, I think.
Honorable mention also goes to David Salice, who gave the answer of Neil Gaiman's Sandman, which has off-the-wall scenes. I love Sandman. I'm still really heartbroken that Joseph Gordon-Levitt never went through with his movie. I'm still waiting for a Sandman on-screen adaptation.
Yeah, sure.
What?
It's DC. Who cares?
Oh, jeez.
Honorable mention also goes to Joel Seagrave, who said that he'd have to go with the Death of the Family comic where Joker breaks into the Gotham City Police Department to get his face.
Yeah, that was written by Scott Snyder. I've read that, and that was terrifying. It was written just like a horror film. The Joker was just like, he's a terrific like monster character. Honorable mention also goes to Alex Yanes, who gave the answer Blackest Night, because just seeing those closest to you that have all died, just coming back from the dead to rip your heart out, is just a great setup.
It's a zombie movie.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
But with superheroes.
Honorable mention also goes to George Granitis, who said that the scariest DC movie he's ever seen was Green Lantern because it was so bad it gave him nightmares.
I didn't really appreciate that answer. No, that was a good one.
Final honorable mention goes to Caleb Albers, who said that the 2004 Punisher movie was the scariest Marvel movie he's ever seen because he saw it when he was just 10 years old. And the scene where Spacker Dave gets the piercings ripped out of his face just horrified him. And I think I was about 20 years old when I saw that movie, so I didn't think it was too scary, but I can absolutely see how it could traumatize a child.
Yeah. So the winners of this week's No Prize are Aaron Alexander Jones, who said Batman Returns, because, seeing Christopher Walken push Selina out of the window and, the Penguin's bleeding face, it was traumatizing for every child who saw that, I think. I definitely remember it.
Yeah. The other winner is CJ Kraft, who said that the Legion television show was the scariest thing because of its surreal and creepy setting and the movements of the Shadow King. It's just all nightmare fuel, which I also thought was genuinely terrifying. Probably the most terrifying Marvel thing I've ever seen, honestly, and that includes the movies and the comics. But speaking on the subject, how would you answer this question?
Well, I'm actually a pretty big fan of the film Constantine that starred Keanu Reeves. I like to think that's scary. It's probably not that scary, but
It has some scary moments for sure.
I just like the tone and the vibe of it. TV show wise, I would probably say Constantine again, because that TV show did delve into its horror roots for sure. And comic wise, there was a mini series that Grant Morrison did called Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. And that was pretty wild. Primarily due, I think, to David Mack's artwork. It's like a watercolor kind of.
Some of his work on Daredevil was really creepy. But I think the scariest Marvel comic I ever read was, it was a Moonlight comic. It was an old school one drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz. And his artwork is horrifying as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe the New Mutants. The New Mutants run was pretty scary with the Demon Bear. Scariest TV show for Marvel's probably Legion, and the scariest movie, I think, is probably Blade 2, I think. Or maybe Man-Thing, although that wasn't really that scary. I thought there were moments in Blade 2 that were legitimately terrifying, and I thought it was much more of a horror movie as opposed to Blade 1.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You can't go wrong with Guillermo del Toro either.
Yeah. But yeah, that does it for our No Prize. Congrats again to CJ Kraft and Aaron Alexander Jones. If you, the listener, would like to win your own No Prize, go ahead and stay tuned to later on this episode when we ask another question of the week. With that out of the way,
on to the news. So depending on what comics you're currently reading, the news that Tom King is co-writing The New Gods with Ava DuVernay is either really good news or really bad news.
Why?
Because Tom King is extremely controversial right now. If you're not familiar with him, he's an Eisner Award-winning comic writer who's currently contracted with DC, though he's written some stuff for Marvel before.
Yeah, he did a great run on The Vision. I love that series.
And he did a great job on Mr. Miracle, who is a New Gods character. I just actually finished reading that run a few weeks ago, and it was really good. So part of me is really excited about this. But as some DC fans know, he's kind of, I don't want to say ruined the Batman title.
What? Really?
But a lot of people are upset with him for the choices that he's made. He's a fantastic writer, but his creative choices leave a little bit to be desired.
Well, he makes unconventional creative choices, I would say.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. But to me, that's part of the appeal of him. Sort of. For a comic, absolutely. For this movie, where we're introducing these characters to the general public, maybe not the most comfortable of choices. Now, of course, he's co-writing this with Ava DuVernay.
And what other film has Ava DuVernay wrote? We know she directed A Wrinkle in Time and Selma, but I'm not sure if she wrote any of those films.
No, it doesn't look like she did, but she definitely has writing credits.
Okay.
So I'm hoping between the two of them, they could come out with something that's not too controversial and hopefully something that could be enjoyed by everyone. Ultimately, I think this is going to be compared a lot to Marvel's Eternals, which is coming out first.
Well, we don't even know what the Eternals movie is going to be like.
Right.
But you're talking about in terms of like themes and story elements?
Right. They're both sort of like these pantheons created by Jack Kirby. So maybe, taking these two sort of controversial writers and creators is a good thing because it will make it different.
I'm still hoping that the Eternals movie is going to cause DC to back out of a New Gods film just because I like fucking with DC.
Fuck you. No, I'm worried about that too, honestly.
Yeah.
Because how many times has it happened where DC announces a project, it has a writer and everything, and then it just falls through?
A lot.
Yes.
Like 90% of the projects they've announced have not happened.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, let's move on to the Jessica Jones Season 3 announcement trailer. There's not too much to discuss here, considering that the trailer's just under 30 seconds long, and it basically just entails a guy dinking and dashing on Jessica Jones. He, knocks on the door, and then he runs away. But he's talking about how she's, a phony and a fraud and everything like that. We do get a quick few shots of the villain, but we don't know who he is. A lot of people are speculating that Hellcat will actually be the primary villain of at least the first half of this season.
Really?
Just considering how contentious things were between Trish and Jessica from the end of season 2. That scene with Trish and what she did while Jessica and her mom were on the Ferris wheel, that scene still haunts me to this day.
Yeah, don't give away any spoilers.
I won't, but if you haven't seen Jessica Jones season 2, it's a decent season. It's not as good as season 1, but it's worth watching if you're at all interested in probably checking out season 3. But as we know, at the end of season 2, Trish gets her Hellcat powers after being experimented on, and that'll be really interesting to see. We should do a Catwoman Hellcat duel episode around the time that this season drops. But back to the villain, some people on Reddit are speculating that this is going to be a villain known as Fool Killer, who's kind of a D-level villain in Marvel.
Yeah.
But he's a religious nut who has this special gun that if he shoots you with it, you die in 24 hours.
That's
he basically
weird.
he says you have 24 hours to live, so make your last day count or die a fool. That's why he's called the Fool Killer. So it's kind of a creepy concept, but if they do anything like that within this season, I think it'll be pretty interesting and pretty on par with all the interesting things that this show has pulled off in the 2 seasons it's been on.
Watch the show end up 24, where each episode is 1 hour that she has left to live.
Oh, maybe. No, but they only have 13 episode seasons for Netflix, so it will be the very last Marvel show on Netflix. So that's a little bit bittersweet. It'll be an end of this kind of era of the Defenders. But hopefully it ends with a bang. We know that Daredevil Season 3 went out on top. It was probably the best season of superhero television I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. Later on this month, we'll be reviewing it. Probably towards the end of this month, so everybody has time to watch it, since the season drops June 14th. But yeah, talking about this brings us to our question of the week.
Who do you think will be the main villain in Jessica Jones Season 3?
Or who do you hope to see as the main villain? Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media.
Speaking of superhero television, as I mentioned before, I finished Doom Patrol Season 1, and I have to say, this is a show that I wish was on HBO or some other platform where more people are able to see it. Because the show was absurdly fantastic. It is the weirdest hour of television I saw every week, and I just loved it.
Really?
The actors, the cast, I think are the standout, in addition to the storyline. But April Bowlby as Elastigirl was a huge standout for me. She did a fantastic job as an actress playing an actress. Brendan Fraser's voice, it was made for the character of Robot Man. He just brought so much humor and heart to the show.
I just like hearing Brendan Fraser cuss a lot.
What the fuck? Every episode. Diane Guerrero, who played Crazy Jane, she needs to be nominated for an Emmy for this role, because her interpretations of so many different versions of this character were so well done.
Really?
Yeah, I remember thinking in the lead up to the show, based on the trailers, that I thought her character was going to be really annoying, but she was fantastic. And Matthew Bomer as Negative Man, his arc and his performance were just really heartfelt.
What about Cyborg?
Jovian Wade, the actor, he did a pretty good job as Cyborg. Not probably my favorite interpretation of the character, although one probably more faithful to the comics than the Justice League film.
Okay.
But he did a fine job. I think the real standout of this was Alan Tudyk as Mr. Nobody.
Really?
Every time he was on screen, it was just so bizarre and so absurd and so hilarious. He just gave a fantastic performance. And it was just so meta, too, because he would talk to you, the audience member, and just talk about the show.
I've always liked Alan Tudyk, so it's cool to see that you're so happy with his performance.
I wish this cast made a film version of this. Because, again, I want this to be as accessible to as many people as possible. And it will be on Netflix, I think, soon, for people outside of the United States. But if you're in the United States...
like Titans?
Yeah, you have to subscribe to DC Universe to see it.
Did the show have a lot of action?
Not as much as you would think, but it was always more about the characters. The action it did have was amazing. Like, it was definitely a quality over quantity type thing. Like, the final battle of the final episode is between a giant cockroach and a giant rat.
What?
Like, making out in a city street that can teleport and is genderqueer. It's just the most off-the-wall and mind-blowing stuff you've ever seen. And it's really faithful to the comic in that respect.
Cool. Well, I'm actually interested in seeing this, but I'm not about to subscribe to DC Universe, so...
You could borrow my subscription. I will watch Legion if you watch this.
Really?
Yes.
Deal.
Okay. Handshake?
All right, handshake.
All right.
All right.
If you guys have seen the show, let me know what you thought of it, because I'd love to talk with someone else who's seen this. I don't know anyone else who's seen it.
I guess that does it for all the news this episode. Let's go ahead and jump into the main event where we find out who will win in a fight between Negative Man and Cyclops.
Okay, Negative Man versus Cyclops. As we mentioned in our last episode, this is either going to be a genius match or it's just going to be embarrassing. Now, when we determined that we wanted to pit Cyclops against someone, I actually had a really hard time figuring out
His DC equivalent?
Yes, because Cyclops is a pretty unique character in a way.
He's mostly generic.
But, like, ability-wise.
Well, effectively, he just kind of shoots lasers.
Well, yeah, it's so simple. But who else just shoots lasers?
Booster Gold.
No, because he's also super strong.
Oh.
Do you see what problem I'm running into now?
Yes.
So I knew that the X-Men were based on the Doom Patrol characters. And as I dove more into the Doom Patrol characters, I kind of saw some connections and correlations between Negative Man and Cyclops in the fact that they both emit this energy that they have to shield everyone else from, you know, and if they didn't, like, it would be dangerous for everyone they loved and everyone around them.
Right. Yeah, that's why I like this matchup. They're both kind of tragic figures. Although I do have to say that even though X-Men was based off of Doom Patrol was based off of Fantastic Four, so...
Yeah, pretty heavily. And the Fantastic Four is based off of Challengers of the Unknown, so, you know, how far back do you go?
Well, the Challengers of the Unknown were based off of,
Exactly.
The Invaders?
Nope. I don't think so. So we're going to talk about this matchup later on.
Oh yeah, if you've never listened to one of our episodes before, the way we determine a winner between these two characters is through the character statistics that we place through a probabilistic model known as a Monte Carlo simulation. You can Wikipedia that. Basically, what it does is it takes the base character stats that we have, which we get from Marvel.com, and we extrapolate the DC stats from those criteria.
And we also add a few more just to make a more robust simulation.
Right. It takes those numbers and it randomizes them along a normal distribution, which forms like a bell curve. So the base stat will appear the most often and the outliers will appear least often, but randomizing that stat number represents all the variables that take place in the course of battle. We take these numbers, run them through the simulation, and compare the results against each other 1,000 times to simulate 1,000 battles. From that, we get a percentage of wins for each character, and the character that has the most number of wins, we declare the overall victor.
And of course, this was the same method that the Spike television series Deadliest Warrior used back when that was on the air like a decade ago.
Right, right. And they would find out who'd win in a fight between like a ninja and a Spartan.
Yeah, exactly.
Same concept.
So there's no bias in our results because Joseph and I are both heavily biased. The results are not based on fan votes. There's nothing we would consider an uncharacteristic feat of strength. It's just stats.
But before we run the simulations, we like to go into each character's histories and powers and abilities, and then we like to kind of improvise a scenario where we talk about how we think a match between the two characters would actually play out. I think I went first in our last Duel episode by giving the backstory of Man-Thing, so I think it's your turn to go first and let us know all about Negative Man.
Right. So Lawrence, aka Larry, Trainer, was a hotshot test pilot for the United States Air Force. When he tested an experimental suborbital jet, he accidentally flew into a cosmic field of strange radioactive energy in the upper atmosphere that shut down his plane's guidance system and caused Larry to go unconscious. He miraculously survived his plane crash, though was badly injured. He watched as a rescue plane approached and noticed its landing gear was stuck. In a moment of desperation, and with a great desire to help the plane, he reached out to it, and his consciousness shot out of his body in the form of a negative energy being, pitch black, with an electrical aura. The negative spirit saved the plane and returned to Larry's inert body. He was rescued from the wreckage by a team of doctors who found him with translucent skin, his body glowing with radiation. The doctors managed to stabilize him, though one of them died from the radiation that Larry was emitting. Larry was confined to a lead-lined contamination cell and unable to have any human contact, but was eventually saved by the wheelchair-bound Dr. Niles Calder, whom you can learn more about in our Elastigirl vs. Miss Marvel episode. Dr. Calder presented Larry with lead-lined adhesive bandages, which, along with a pair of goggles, allowed Larry to return to the outside world.
I'm wondering why they gave him adhesive, lead-lined bandages, which seems so less secure than like a lead metal suit or something.
Because it just looks cooler.
He looks like a mummy.
Yeah. Shunned from society, Larry isolated himself and eventually accepted an invitation from Dr. Calder, also known as the Chief, to live in his manor with a collection of other metahuman misfits to form a super team known as the Doom Patrol. Under the Chief's care, Larry learned to emit the negative spirit within him at will, though his body became lifeless when he did, and he could initially only do so for a maximum of 60 seconds before he risked death. As a founding member of the Doom Patrol, he fought alongside his crush, Elastigirl, and Robot Man, then later Mento and Beast Boy, before he and other founding members of the team later died in an explosion to protect the town of Codsville from the Brotherhood of Evil.
What a ripoff! Brotherhood of Evil Mutants? Is that what you were gonna say?
Nope. You have that reversed, my friend.
What?
Evil Mutants is the ripoff of Brotherhood of Evil.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, shit.
But while Larry's physical body was destroyed, his consciousness remained in the surviving negative spirit, which eventually inhabited the body of a Russian cosmonaut, Colonel Valentia Vostok, turning her into the hero Negative Woman, who joined a subsequent version of the Doom Patrol team whose mission it was to find the Chief's body. They eventually found the Chief alive, and he rejoined the team, later making a clone of Larry's original body, which the negative spirit returned to. Larry's return to form was short-lived, however, as he was severely injured while battling an alien race known as the Dominators, who had detonated a gene bomb that affected Earth's metahumans. Larry awoke in the hospital to find the negative spirit outside of him, with its own separate consciousness. The spirit merged itself with the bodies of Larry and his hospital physician, a woman named Eleanor Poole. The combined entity named itself Rebus, and was able to perform all of the negative spirit's powers while still inside its body. After the Rebus entity created a new body for itself, Larry returned to his cloned body. Larry later learned that the Chief was responsible for the initial accident that irradiated him by corrupting his plane's guidance system. The team disbanded, though a new Doom Patrol was formed later on, and Larry only agreed to join when he learned that Elastigirl had returned from the dead and was on the team. Larry became dependent on the Chief after he learned that the negative spirit used up the bodies it possessed, turning them into a husk, and Larry therefore needed new comatose bodies in which to transfer his consciousness. Eventually, Larry learned to take greater control over the negative spirit and could control it for longer than 60 seconds. In the New 52, Larry learned that the spirit was an entity known as Keeg Bovo, from the dimension known as negative space.
What? Oh, interesting.
Power-wise, Larry's physical form has no innate power other than the ability to kill you with radiation poisoning if he removes his bandages. The negative spirit he projects, however, can fly at supersonic speeds, can absorb and emit thermal energy, either in radioactive heat waves or focused into concussive blasts. It can also phase through solid matter, including biological matter, causing that individual to feel pain.
So it's like a ghost.
Yeah, sort of. An energy ghost. His only weaknesses are that Larry can't project the negative spirit indefinitely, and when he does, his physical body becomes inert, which I admit is a huge, huge drawback.
I mean, if he just kind of runs away from the battle and then emits his negative spirit, it's fine, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. So the negative spirit, it used to be his own consciousness, and then it turned out to be an actual sentient other being?
Well, it was always a sentient other being. It's just that his consciousness also resided within that being.
Oh. So who had control of the negative spirit while it was in action?
Larry did.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. Man, I have no idea how that's going to play out in our speculation.
Yeah, I'm curious as well.
But let me get into Cyclops. So Scott Summers was born in Anchorage, Alaska, to his parents, Catherine and Christopher Summers. His father was a test pilot for the U.S. Air Force and was flying the family home from a vacation one day when their personal plane was attacked by a Shi'ar alien scout ship. With their aircraft about to explode, Catherine grabbed their only available parachute, gave it to Scott and his younger brother Alex, and pushed them out of the plane to safety. The parachute caught fire, however, and the boys plummeted toward the ground, only to be saved by the activation of Scott's mutant power. A powerful red force shot from Scott's eyes and slowed their descent enough to avoid death, though upon landing, Scott suffered a head injury that would forever leave him unable to control his optic blasts. Scott and Alex were taken to an orphanage where they were discovered by the criminal geneticist Mr. Sinister. He separated the brothers by arranging for Alex to be adopted, and then kept Scott in the foster system so he could be studied in secret, going so far as to kill his potential foster parents. When Scott was a young teen, Sinister discovered that the mineral ruby quartz could be used to block his optic blasts, and used a ruby quartz visor to control his power. Scott ran away from the orphanage at age 15 and was attacked in public after accidentally destroying a construction crane. Professor X discovered him and recruited him into his special school for the gifted and as the first member of the X-Men, where he would fight for Xavier's dream of mutant and human peaceful coexistence under the codename Cyclops. Though he was an effective leader and strategist against the likes of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the burden of leadership and his inability to control his power left him socially awkward with his teammates, even though he had developed feelings for Jean Grey, whom you can learn more about in our Raven vs. Phoenix episode. Cyclops is mentioned a lot in her backstory too. Scott later learned that Jean was interested in him too, and the two became romantically involved. On one mission, the X-Men fought a villain called the Living Pharaoh, who was feeding off the energy of a mutant named Alex Summers, who was Scott's long-lost brother. Alex ended up joining the team under the codename Havoc. As the original X-Men team left the school, Cyclops stayed on to train subsequent team formations, though he still dated Jean. On a mission from space, the team's escape shuttle was damaged, and Jean sacrificed herself to save the X-Men by using her power to guide the craft to safety while being exposed to lethal radiation. A cosmic entity known as the Phoenix Force placed her in suspended animation and took her place on the X-Men team for a while. Cyclops helped fight against the Shi'ar aliens and discovered his father was alive and going by the name Corsair, a space pirate fighting against the aliens who had destroyed his plane all those years ago and killed his wife Catherine. Meanwhile, Scott grew distrusting of the Phoenix Force, whom he believed was Jean Grey, and the entity was transformed into the Dark Phoenix through the manipulations of the Hellfire Club, which was a group of sinister mutants. Cyclops thought he lost the love of his life after the Dark Phoenix Force destroyed itself in front of him. However, the real Jean was still alive in suspended animation. Distraught, Scott left the X-Men to live in Alaska, where he met a clone of Jean named Madeline Pryor that was created by Mr. Sinister. The two had a child named Nathan Summers, who would grow to become Cable, whom you can learn more about in our Booster Gold vs. Cable episode. Eventually, the real Jean was discovered by the Avengers, and she and Scott were reunited, raising baby Nathan as the original X-Men team reformed as X-Factor. However, the ancient, powerful mutant Apocalypse, whom you can learn more about in our Black Adam vs. Apocalypse episode, kidnapped Nathan and infected him with a virus that forced Scott and Jean to send the child to the future in order to help treat him. X-Factor later regrouped into the primary X-Men team, and Scott and Jean got married. Immediately after, they were pulled into the future for 12 years to help raise Nathan into Cable and fight Apocalypse. When they returned, they became co-headmasters of Xavier's school and led the X-Men after the professor became powerless after unleashing the psychic entity known as Onslaught. Cyclops had to merge with Apocalypse in an attempt to stop the villain from siphoning the energy of the 12 most powerful mutants in the world, and in the process was believed to be killed. Jean found Scott alive in Egypt, his mind struggling to assert itself over Apocalypse's psyche, and she was able to help him regain control, but the experience left Scott grim and distant. Their relationship became fractured, especially as Jean's attention was focused on her responsibilities as the new headmistress of the school, and Scott began a psychic affair with Emma Frost. He was caught cheating by Jean, who was soon after killed by a mutant named Zorn, who was posing as Magneto. As she died, Scott apologized to her and she forgave him, understanding that they had grown apart. After Jean's funeral, Scott became headmaster of Xavier's school and redesigned the X-Men to be more prominent in the public eye in order to improve the perception of mutants. After the Scarlet Witch eradicated the powers of most of the mutants on Earth, Cyclops and the X-Men were vulnerable. They were attacked by a villain named Vulcan, who was revealed to be Scott and Alex's younger brother, a fact that was erased from the brothers' memories by Professor X, who sought to keep Vulcan's apparent death a secret. Disillusioned, Scott then relocated the team to an island created off the coast of San Francisco called Utopia. During the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, the reconstituted Phoenix Force arrived on Earth to bond with Hope Summers, who was the first mutant to be born after Scarlet Witch's decimation of mutant powers. In a defensive move, the Avengers split the Phoenix Force into 5 shards, with one of them possessing Scott. He used his new godlike powers in an effort to bring about human and mutant coexistence by solving the world's hunger and energy crises, though the Avengers tried to subdue the potential dictators, leading to a fight between them and the X-Men. Scott, corrupted by the power, transformed into Dark Phoenix. Though he was stopped by a vision of Jean, Hope and the Scarlet Witch used the Phoenix energy to restore the powers of all the former mutant population. The possession by the Phoenix Force, however, left Scott's powers more unwieldy than ever before, which caused him trouble as he began to lead the repowered mutant population in a revolution for mutant rights. His fight was short-lived, however, as the Terrigen mists that had been released into the atmosphere by Black Bolt, the leader of the Inhumans, began killing and sterilizing many of the world's mutants. This led to a fight between the X-Men and the Inhumans, where Scott was seemingly killed by one of Black Bolt's screams. However, that incident was revealed to be an illusion created by Emma Frost to make Scott a martyr for his cause. In reality, he died through exposure to the Terrigen mists, and you can learn more about this event in our Shazam vs. Black Bolt episode.
Wow.
Recently, Scott was resurrected through the time manipulations of his son, Cable. As far as powers go, Scott's mutant ability is the steady projection of a powerful force that emanates from his eyes. The power and size of these optic blasts can be controlled through Scott's ruby quartz visor, combined with his own ability to focus. At their most powerful, Cyclops can blast holes in mountains and demolish armored tanks with ease. As the foremost leader of the X-Men since the team's creation, Scott is a gifted strategist and a trained martial artist with black belts in Aikido and Judo. Due to his time spent with Jean and Emma, Scott is also capable of telepathic resistance. So yeah, that's Cyclops. Any surprises there?
What a ripoff.
What are you talking about?
No, Negative Man doesn't need a black belt in Aikido. He will just blast you before you even get close enough to use it.
Okay, we'll see. Now that we've gone over each character's histories and powers, what we're going to do now is improvise a scenario and how we think this fight will actually play out. One of the 1,000 battles that we simulate.
Right. We don't have any rules for this match other than that the characters don't know anything about each other, save for that the other person is a threat that they need to take down.
Right.
And they start about 50 meters apart.
And also the environment in which the fight takes place plays no factor on the battle itself, since we don't take stats or simulate stats for the environment in the simulations that we run. So wherever they're fighting,
it plays no bearing on the match itself.
Right, exactly.
They win on their own merits.
Exactly.
So this is going to be a good match. The Misfit versus the Mutant. Who goes first?
Scott is such a strategist that I'm not entirely sure that he would go first. He might wait and see what he's going up against.
Larry also isn't one known to rush into battle. He's a little bit more restrained.
Okay. Well, in that case, then I might say that Scott goes first with an optic blast.
No! That's what I was afraid of.
All right, so he's 50 meters away. It doesn't matter because Scott's the perfect marksman because his lasers go wherever his eyes go.
Right.
So
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Are Scott's optic blasts thermal energy?
No, they're a force. They look like an energy blast, but they actually possess physical force. It's like getting shot in the face with a series of rapid fire cannonballs or a fire hose. So you get blasted by this optic blast, yeah?
No, because Negative Man just dives and rolls out of the way.
Okay. Well, Cyclops follows Negative Man's dodge by shifting his head just a few inches to the left. And he fires another beam.
Okay, so we'll say Negative Man gets knocked back. But that's when his negative spirit comes out, grabs his body, and flies it to somewhere safe.
Can he do that? Can Negative Man's negative spirit, carry him?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. So as the negative spirit is flying Negative Man away, Cyclops like blasts him out of the sky with one of his optic blasts, and he's like running towards the fleeing Negative Man.
Okay, so when that happens though, Negative Man's physical body gets sort of like blasted away from the arena that they're playing in. So
What?
Yeah, you can't really interact with it anymore.
Yeah, and it fucking dies because it falls out of the sky from a freaking optic blast.
It wasn't that high. They were pretty low to the ground, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so basically what you're doing though is you're putting some distance, because I guess the Negative Spirit can go at supersonic speeds, right?
Right.
So he's trying to protect his host body.
Exactly.
The problem is that the Negative Spirit cannot exist indefinitely outside of Negative Man's body.
Just long enough to take down Cyclops.
Okay, we'll see.
So Larry's body is safely out of the way. Negative Man sets his attention on Cyclops and just charges him at full speed.
Okay, well, Cyclops sees Negative Man charging at him, and he shoots him out of the air with an optic blast.
Okay, and then the optic blast moves through Negative Man's body.
What are you
because
talking-
he goes intangible.
He could go through, like, physical objects, right?
Yeah, he could go through matter.
But even though Cyclops' blasts are a force, they are not strictly matter. It is still an energy. Can the Negative Spirit phase through energy?
I don't know. I'm gonna say yes.
I'm gonna say no.
Well, what is a force, really? Like, is he pushing air?
It's Newton's.
Like, there's only 4 fundamental forces. Which one is it? Is it gravity?
It's exotic. It's an exotic force. It's from another dimension.
What?
Yeah, and Cyclops' eyes are the aperture to that dimension.
Are you just making that up?
No. So we'll have to compromise and say that the optic blasts don't just go through the Negative Spirit, but they don't hurt him nearly as much as they would like a standard human body.
A more physical entity.
Right, exactly.
Okay, regardless, once the Negative Spirit starts getting blasted, he dodges to the side really fast. Okay, so then he's just like circling around Cyclops, just getting closer and closer and closer until he like rips right into Cyclops' body. And Cyclops is like, oh, fuck, that hurt.
So if the Negative Spirit goes through you, it basically bombards your innards with radiation, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it does emit radiation, just like Larry's body. In fact, that's the source of the radiation.
Gotcha. All right.
So now Cyclops has cancer.
Now he knows he's dealing with like a burning ghost figure. So he turns his optic blasts up to like their widest maximum setting, their most powerful setting. So it's gonna be really hard for the Negative Spirit to continue dodging this.
Except Negative Man sees that this is happening, so he dives into the ground.
Oh shit.
Exactly. So then, as Cyclops is like looking around, the Negative Spirit reaches his hand up on Cyclops' ankle and causes it to explode.
He just explodes his boot, right?
No, the whole ankle's fucking gone.
What are you talking about? Like he shot like a concussive blast that destroyed his ankle?
Yeah, he created an explosion right by his ankle.
Okay, the foot is damaged. I'm not gonna say it's like completely like freaking evaporated.
What?
He's not walking around on a stump here.
Yes, he is.
Okay, so then he fashions a quick tourniquet using one of his many like belts that he has on his costume.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so he's not bleeding to death. But you know who is about to die?
Who?
Freaking Negative Man, because the Negative Spirit has been outside of the body too damn long.
I don't. This has been like 30 seconds.
It's been like 10 minutes.
What? No.
That's how far away the Negative Man's body is.
This is fast paced. Oh, that's right. He did blast him far away. Okay, Negative Man races back to Larry.
Okay, but as he's racing back to Larry, Cyclops shoots a hyper-focused beam right through the Negative Spirit's heart.
The Negative Spirit has no heart.
So you're saying the Negative Spirit has no weak points whatsoever?
No, it's like a ghost.
Okay, well, so since we established that the optic blasts would have some effect on the Negative Spirit, Cyclops keeps shooting him and slowing him down from getting to the Negative Man's body.
No,
He
if
keeps shooting
anything, he's just pushing him faster.
No.
He's just pushing him faster.
He's shooting him at an angle, knocking him down to the ground.
Oh, he's above him? No.
Oh, he's shooting at a side angle, which like
He is below him.
He pushes him off course either
Cyclops
way.
is beneath him.
But if he shoots him at the proper angle, just like how a pool cue hits a pool ball, if you hit it at the side, it's going to knock the target off to the side.
This is not a sphere.
No, but he's an object, and Cyclops is really good at using geometry and angles to affect his targets.
Okay, so the Negative Spirit dives into the ground and travels the rest of the
Fuck
way
you!
underground.
That's so stupid. So the negative spirit travels underground the rest of the way since Cyclops is hampering his ability to get back to his host.
Yeah, he goes into Larry, and then he's like, recharged, and then he zooms back out.
So how long does the negative spirit have to be back in Larry's body before he's able to be expelled again, basically?
I mean, long enough for Larry to, like, his heart to resume beating.
Oh, does he go into cardiac arrest every time the negative spirit leaves him?
He becomes lifeless.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's the worst superhero power ever. I thought he was just like comatose. I thought his brain wasn't functioning or something.
No, I think his whole body just shuts down.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Okay, so the negative spirit is back with the negative man, and Cyclops sees this from a really long distance and pulls off the most expert snipe he's ever pulled off in his entire career as an X-Man.
Okay.
Me not necessarily knowing how far the distance is between those two. I'm just assuming that they're, like a mile away or...
Uh-huh.
So he just blasts and it goes right through Negative Man's heart, killing him. It's a real focused beam.
That's dumb. It's a force. It's not gonna, like, cut through him.
He's been able to focus his beam so narrow to, like, the diameter of, like, a pencil. And it's gone through the blob. The blob being a being who can repel almost any force directed against him.
It, like, cut the blob?
Yeah, it shot through the blob. His beams can be sharp when they're that thin.
Okay, so Larry Trainor is dead, but not the negative spirit.
What are you talking about?
So then the negative spirit leaps from the body.
This match is over.
Nope. Nope.
That's so stupid.
It's not. The negative spirit now is no longer bound to a host, so he doesn't have to worry about Larry.
Oh my god.
So then he leaps from his body, goes into the sky, and just fires off, like, massive, like, radiation heat waves just all over Cyclops' area.
But
definitely not.
I think this match is already over anyway, since Negative Man is dead.
No. Larry is dead, not Negative Man.
Why doesn't Negative Man just be Negative Man all the time then? Why does Negative Man just not ditch the body altogether?
That's a good question. Actually, I think it's one that has recently been answered in the New 52 when they introduced the whole character of Keeg Bovo. I think they like being a part of each other.
Okay. Anyway, I think that does it for this matchup. It's pretty weird. So either Cyclops kills Larry and that's the end of the match, or Negative Spirit flies up and kills Cyclops and that's the end of the match.
I don't know how Cyclops pulled off that sniper.
It was so damn
shot
impressive, man.
When he's too busy, like,
so impressive,
gripping his ankle, like, oh, my fucking ankle, it's gone. He's bleeding out.
He's tough enough to pull it off. Psych is a badass, all right? Don't underestimate him. But let's go ahead and run these simulations, run their stats, and find out who exactly would come out as the victor.
Okay, we're back. It was actually a challenge to determine some of Negative Man's stats, and we ended up having to average sort of Larry's with the negative spirits on some instances.
Right, like as far as durability goes, the negative spirit is pretty much indestructible, but Larry is very much not. And also that goes for evasiveness as well. Considering that Negative Man is essentially two beings at some points, you have to kind of figure out where those two stats meet in the middle and kind of hope that the randomization along the normal distribution will cover that spread.
Right. So we said that Negative Man was faster because the negative spirit can travel at hypersonic speeds. But Cyclops is a better fighter, and he has more strategic intelligence as an experienced leader.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he's pretty smart. He's one of the most prepared heroes in the Marvel Universe. He's kind of like Batman.
What? No.
Yeah.
Get out of here with that.
No.
Don't even compare those two.
Maybe read some X-Men comic books and then get back to me.
Two.
All right.
Yeah. And everything else, they were pretty close. Cyclops had a higher damage output.
Right, because his optic blasts are they can get so powerful.
And they're both about average strength.
Yeah.
So who do you think came out on top?
I think this is actually really close, but I'm going to say that Cyclops came out on top just because he's my boy.
Yeah, you and probably a whole bunch of other fanboys listening right now. And you guys would be vindicated because Cyclops won 51.1% of the time.
I don't know why, for some reason, I forgot the word vindicated for like a half second. I was like, fuck you. And then I was like, oh, wait, no, that's a good thing. All right.
Yeah, he won 511 out of the 1,000 matches.
Oh, that's
as
really
compared
close.
to, Negative Man's 489. This was a coin toss.
Yeah, it's surprising, actually, although they kind of went back and forth along the stats, so I guess I'm not surprised because it seemed like they were pretty even.
I'm actually really surprised. I was expecting to, lose by a landslide. I'm actually kind of happy with these results, and I'm kind of happy with how Negative Man turned out in this battle.
I really had no idea how you were going to protect Larry when I was thinking about our speculation.
Yeah.
Because I just assumed that no matter what you did, Cyclops was just going to focus all of his energy on the comatose body of Larry.
Right.
But the fact that you carried him away was a pretty decent strategy.
Oh, yeah.
Assuming they're in an environment where he could do that. They might be fighting on like a desert island or something like that. And then, Larry's fucked.
Then Larry's just sinking.
Right.
It's okay. He's not breathing, so.
But yeah, it's always super interesting when you have two characters, that have something in common, but powers-wise are drastically different that still end up, in regards to the stats, being at around the same level.
Yeah, definitely. Like, those are some of my favorite battles, some of my favorite matches.
The most surprising, for sure.
Yeah.
But that does it for this episode. Let us know what you guys thought about this fight by writing into us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can find us on social media on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, finding links to all three of those social media profiles at our website, dynamicduel.com.
Which, as we've mentioned in recent episodes, has been redesigned. So definitely check it out. And while you're there, make sure to click on our merchandise link, which will take you to our store on TeePublic, where you can buy various t-shirts and mugs and whatever you want, all with our no prize illustrations are on them.
Yeah, so I think for this episode, Jonathan is going to be doing a no prize with
Negative
Man.
Yeah.
So if you ever wanted a t-shirt or, a fucking mug or something with Negative Man on it, go ahead and check us out by visiting our website at dynamicduel.com and clicking on the merch link.
And everyone could be like, oh, why do you have the Invisible Man on a mug? And be like, it's a Negative Man, you dummy.
In our next episode, we will be reviewing Dark Phoenix. And
oh crap, I do not have my tickets.
Yeah, you got to get your tickets. Actually, tickets are still really easy to come by. At least they were for me. I don't think this movie is going to make a whole lot of money, considering that interest in this franchise has all but dwindled due to the suckage that was X-Men Apocalypse. And, the excitement that Marvel has acquired the X-Men rights again. So it's kind of a redundant film. That being said, do you have any predictions for the film?
I actually don't know what to expect from it, honestly. Like, I'm still really curious to see how it's going to end and how they're going to try and wrap up 2 decades of storyline.
I predict that I'm going to go on a 10-minute rant about how much I hate Jennifer Lawrence's portrayal of Mystique.
I will look forward to that.
All right. We'll see if that happens in our next episode. Tune in next week. And until then,
up and away.
True believers.